Right, folks, I'm glad that you could make it. My name is Ben Johnson, and I'm the president of AFT Vermont, and I'm a librarian at Vermont Tech by trade. So we're here to reclaim the promise of a quality, affordable public higher education in Vermont. Vermont has been turning its back on that promise by systematically disinvesting in public higher ed over 30 plus years. So we know that there's no overnight solution to that problem that took 30 years to create. And we know that some of our solutions are aggressive, but our purpose here is to start the conversation and start turning the ship around. So today we're releasing a report that sets out a responsible path to solve the problem over the long term. It's time to reclaim the promise. We'll hear first from Linda Olson, Vice President for Higher Ed for AFT Vermont and President of the Vermont State Colleges Faculty Federation. Linda.
As Ben said, we are here to reclaim the promise of affordable public higher education for the good of our students and the good of our state. For 35 years, the state has neglected public higher education and with dwindling support. In 1980, state support represented 50% of our budget, while now it is under 18%. This places a significant burden on Vermont families as they struggle to pay one of the highest tuitions in the country. Our students also graduate with a higher than average debt. In Vermont, we have one of the highest high school graduation rates, but 40% of our students don't go on to post-secondary education. I can't help but think the cost of higher education in the state is the cause of this, at least in large part. It is impossible also to maintain a high-quality education in light of dwindling resources. We are at a crossroads. When the VSC was enacted, the state promised to support us in whole or substantial part. We are here to reclaim that promise. If we don't do it now, public higher education itself is at risk. AFT Vermont has figured out a plan to reclaim the promise for affordable, high-quality public education. It is a plan that will protect and invest in the Higher Education Trust Fund. It will tap into new revenue sources. It recommends restrictions on VSAC funds portability, and it will make sure that any new resources will be dedicated to services that directly impact student education. It took us 35 years to get in this hole, and it will take a long time for us to get out of it. But this plan represents a gradual, fiscally responsible strategy to dig us out of this hole. Thank you.
And next we'll hear from Lynn Castro, Castleton State College Junior.
As was previously stated, my name is Lynn Castro and I'm a junior sociology student at Castleton State. When I first heard that this was happening, I knew I had to be here. You see, from a young age, we're conditioned to see college as our primary source of social and class mobility. If we just go to school, we can change the course of our financial and social future. At least that's what we're led to believe. But what happens when the average debt of a Vermont native graduating from a college institution is in the tens of thousands of dollars? I'll tell you what that means. College becomes a death sentence, forcing students into monumental debt that actively works to put us into sure economic failure. It puts hardworking parents into the position of mortgaging their homes or getting their student into the classroom. And for people like me, who don't have the luxury of parents going into debt, we have to choose to either be homeless or get a college education. And that's evidenced by a recent poll. 10 to 12% of college students are either homeless or at risk of being homeless. Vermont is rated as one of the worst places for college students to live. So I ask you, Vermont legislature and my fellow Vermonters, what do you want the legacy of our students to be? Do you want to leave a legacy of Vermont students being empowered and uplifted, or do you want a legacy of debt and limited opportunity structures? And that answer should be perfectly clear. There is no time like the present to make this decision, so please make it now.
We're really glad to have some of our legislative allies here to talk about some of the solutions that they are proposing. So first, Representative Barbara Rachelson.
Thank you. So, hearing from Lynn was very powerful, and here are some of the realities that is not such good news. Graduation rates. Vermont has one of the lowest rates for its high school graduates attending an institution of higher learning. Yet we know we have one of the highest graduation rates in the country, and yet, again, just 45% of Vermonters will attend college after graduation as compared to the national average of 57%. Need for advanced education and training. We know that Vermonters need expanded access to education and training to be prepared for the fastest growing or highest paying occupational opportunities in the state. And that even the most promising career opportunities, not in that sector or portion, will require additional levels of training and education. Getting this training and employment is one of the best ways to move people out of poverty in our state. Debt of Vermonters. Since 2000, Vermont families with children enrolled in college have spent yearly 29 to 73% of their income after financial aid to pay for each year of enrollment for their child to attend a Vermont college or university. Now, the top performing states had families spending 15 to 32% of their income to pay for higher education, and in those states, it was families were paying 17% to have their child of their income to have a child attend a four-year public college. Vermont students and their families, as we heard from Lynn, incur quite a bit of debt. They're incurring 25% or more debt for a bachelor's degree than the national average, ranking Vermont second to last for affordable education. The average student debt for Vermont is $27,318, and the student loan default rate is 8.6%. State support for higher education in Vermont has been and continues to be among the lowest in the nation. Vermont as a state has lagged and continues to lag in how much or how little we fund our institutions of higher learning. And as embarrassing as it is how little we fund our state colleges and universities, it has only gotten worse over time. Our state funding comprises only about 8% of our state colleges and university budgets. And partially as a result, Vermont's published prices for tuition and fees for its public colleges and university are the second highest in the nation, $13,078, where the national average is about $8,244. So what can we do about this? As you've heard, it's going to take a while to dig it out, but what can we do right now that won't cost more money? Well, in 1965, Vermont passed the statute that created VSAC and the state grant program. It was born out of the principle of social justice and a commitment to reducing inequality. Today, in order to accomplish these laudable goals, it's time to change this policy. Frequently I'll hear from people, we should allow our Vermonters to explore other places. And you know what? In a perfectly funded world, maybe so. But in an age when Vermont ranks high in how much debt our Vermont students have and families to take on funding college, how little we fund our higher institutions of learning, how few students are going on to college, it's time to look at doing things differently. Vermont is only one of 2 states that allows total portability of its state scholarships. Other states, if they allow it at all, allow it on a very limited basis, usually based on reciprocity with that state. In 2008, 4,288 students, or 35% of the grant recipients, and roughly 26 to 28% of the Vermont dollars went out of state, totaling about $5.5 million. Vermont has the highest degree of portability of its college support dollars for any state. We send our grant money out of state at 100 times the average rate of the nation as a whole. Vermont grants account for just 3% of the national total, but in terms of grants sent out of state, Vermont accounts for 30%. I am introducing a bill to redirect the funds that currently are used to send Vermonters out of state and instead use these funds to expand the funding for scholarships, for the scholarship pool to attend, for Vermonters to attend Vermont state colleges and UVM, or to states that at least have reciprocity at the very least. My hope is that this bill will result in, 1, more Vermonters choosing to go on to higher education and training after high school, 2, reducing the debt load for Vermont students and families, 3, helping students to be employable and employed, and generate more income for our state, of course, and be able to support their families. And last but not least, provide additional support to our Vermont institutions. Thank you.
Senator Polino.
I want to begin by reminding us that the main thing policymakers do is we make choices. Nothing that happens out there in the public world or in this building is inevitable. It's based on the choices that we make. Sometimes we make good choices, sometimes we make choices that perhaps are not quite so good. Over the years, the Vermont legislature and our governors have consciously and deliberately chosen to underfund our state colleges. We've gotten to the point where we've hit rock bottom, and our families and our economy have suffered. We've dug ourselves a very big hole, as you've heard, and it's time to begin to make the effort to dig ourselves out. Now, there will be people who will say that we simply can't afford to do that. On the other hand, I think most of us would agree that we simply can't afford not to do that. If you are one of those people who are concerned about trying to find ways for youth to stay in Vermont, if you're concerned about having a highly qualified workforce, if you're concerned about having a strong economy, you should be a supporter of better funding for our state colleges to make them more affordable. If you are concerned about increasing inequality in this state, you should be concerned about making our colleges more affordable. Because we are getting to the point where only the wealthy can afford a college education. That means only the wealthy qualify for the best jobs. And we create a cycle that increases that movement towards increasing inequality. So in that case as well, we need to be concerned about the cost of college. I would also remind us that college is not for everybody, let's be clear about that. But we also do know that for the most part, college education and more college graduates mean more income for the state of Vermont, more tax revenues for the state of Vermont, and less reliance on public services in the state of Vermont. So for all these reasons, family affordability, the need for a strong and qualified workforce, wanting to level out income inequality in this state, for all of these reasons and more, we need to do what we can to reclaim the promise and make sure our colleges become more affordable again. As was mentioned, there's going to be a number of ideas that are put on the table to do that, and I'm going to mention just one of them, the bill that I'm introducing, which puts an occupancy fee on hotel rooms in the state of Vermont. $1 from that occupancy fee will be dedicated to supporting Vermont state colleges. In the immediate sense, meaning this year, $3 million would go directly to the state colleges, and $3 million or more would go into the Higher Education Trust Fund. In future years, we would continue to make a major investment each year in the Higher Education Trust Fund. The more money in that fund, the more interest it generates, and then that money is then allocated to our state colleges. So it's a long-term process of building up that fund so that we can have a steady stream of income or revenue for the state colleges so that we can begin the prolonged, hard process of making our colleges affordable for Vermonters again. Thank you.
Senator Zuckerman.
Thank you, Ben. I'll be relatively brief. Actually, today I brought my 9-year-old daughter to the State House. She wasn't able to go to school today, and I was thinking of reflecting on this topic, how she's about halfway now towards what may be her first year of college. It's a little bit shocking to think about, but it puts the whole situation in perspective for me because I think about what's the big picture here. You know, when she goes to college, if we haven't saved enough, which as farmers haven't away that much yet for her college, what's the burden she's going to face coming out of college or university, and how is she going to be able to do the productive job that she would like to do, or start to acquire a property and a home if she already has a debt load like many people do coming out of school today. And so for me, looking at this topic from an investment perspective as a state legislature and as a state is, what is our future economy going to be if everybody already starts out with so much debt in their 20s that they can't be part of the economic engine of buying a home and being part of that aspect of our society. What happens when the jobs they have to choose from are all higher paying jobs somewhere out of state because they have to do that job to pay the debts they have rather than maybe being able to work in state and stay here. So it's really, for me, a topic that's about short-term decisions that are going to make very serious long-term consequences. And we're already facing that today, and the question is, are we going to perpetuate that further? So really, I come up here talking about it in that vein of economic decisions that we're making that are actually going to jeopardize our own state's economic future by saddling folks with so much debt.